Hey everyone, welcome to the Naked Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Sage Hobbs, author and creator of Naked Communication, and I'm so psyched you're here. This show is all about taking charge of your life in new and inspired ways to create a life you deeply love. It's about being more you in all areas of your life, more courageous, more free, more alive, more naked. I'll be sharing stories and advice from amazing people around the world who are up to incredible things on how they are successfully breaking free from fear and old patterns in order to create incredible relationships and impactful lives so that you can do the same. This is the place to be inspired to live a courageous and naked life. Let's do this. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Naked Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Sage Hobbs, and this is episode 52. Happy New Year. If you're listening to this at the start of 2019, when I am recording it just days before that, I'm going to talk about that a bit today, about transitions, new moments, reflection, all of that. You can find the show notes over at sagebhobbs.com/episode-52. Also, a few announcements or things I want to share with you before I dive in. This is one of the last episodes of season 2 of the show, and then I will be taking a break where I will be interviewing new guests and thinking about how I want to launch season 3. So I just wanted to let you know there'll be a space, there'll be a gap. You can catch up on old episodes. You can read my book. You can do whatever kind of things you want to do in the interim. But I look forward to reconnecting with you when season 3 starts, and I just wanted to give you a heads up about that. So what else did I want to share with you? This is a solo show. Solo shows are casual. They're conversational. They are me. They are me being naked with you. I'm actually sitting here in the bedroom of my mom's house in the mountains. I've told everybody to go away and be quiet so I can quietly have a conversation with you and just tell you a bit about what I'm thinking of and my process for the new year and sort of turning over new leaves and having the opportunity for reflection. Before I do that, I just want to say that it's a crazy time of year for a lot of people in the West for a lot of different reasons. This is a time of year where we feel like we should be grateful, and sometimes we're stressed and we're struggling, or we miss people that have died. I always miss my dad a lot at this time of year, and where I feel like I should be super loving and gracious with everybody in my life, and sometimes I just want to hide and read a book and have some peace and quiet. So wherever you are, whatever you're experiencing, it's okay. It's okay to have a human experience. I shared, I believe it was on Instagram, I shared about how I get stressed before the Christmas and Hanukkah time of year, because we do both in our household, because there's so much stuff and consumerism, and my kids are little and they want more. And sometimes I feel like they're not grateful enough, and I feel like we have too many things and other people don't have enough. And the whole thing kind of takes away the magic for me. And I struggle with it. And I have to really be reminded that you can be lucky and blessed and receive a lot and still feel a sense of gratitude, appreciation for what you have, generosity, understanding, perspective of the world. So I had to really get myself back to that place so I could enjoy the holidays with my kids and let them be kids who are very lucky to be raised, in abundance and having more than many, and watching them learn how to appreciate that and understand that that's not how it is for everybody, but also just to appreciate it and enjoy it at the same time. It's an interesting dance for me. So I just wanted to start by saying that whether you celebrate Christmas or Hanukkah or Kwanzaa or anything else or nothing at all, that sometimes the season or time of the year can really just be busy with commercialism and activities and events and sugar and cookies and presents or whatever it looks like. It can bring up a lot of stuff. So be a little bit compassionate with wherever you're at in the process. And some of the ways that I've done that in the past is just to give myself permission to take some time to myself. That's the first thing I do, to say no and to set some limits and sit down and be still. And actually this year, this December was less stressful because we just didn't have as many activities that we said yes to. And that felt good. That felt kind of spacious. We didn't fly anywhere this year, which historically we've always flown to see family sometime in this holiday break. So I just gave myself permission not to do that. And it's been really much more peaceful than in the past. A second thing that I do sometimes is just to make some space for quiet and reflection, which I'm going to be talking to you about on the show, how you can do that. and literally just breathing. So making sure that I get out for some walks on Christmas Day after, some struggle and strain. We finally got our kids to go on a little hike with us, and we just went out for about 3 miles on the trails in our neighborhood. And at first they didn't want to leave, and I let my daughter go and hike in her pajamas, and I let my son bring his new robot on the trails. And I was just like, who cares? Who cares? They can do those things. Let's get them outside. Let's be together outside. And for me, that was amazing. It was beautiful. It was grounding. And really, that was important for me to make that space. And I said, look, it's a gift for me, you guys. I know you don't want to go. I know you just want to stay in the house and be cozy. Please, please, could we do this for me? It matters to me. It's really what I want and need. So that's the second thing that I've been doing to help myself out. And I ask you to think about this for yourself. Like, how can you create a bit more space or a bit more permission? And the third thing is prioritizing, just making sure that pleasure is on the list of things to do, of buying this or going there or cleaning that or cooking this, that there's also some joy in it. So that has been important for me to remember to do. So for example, this year I asked somebody to watch my kids it was my mom. I asked my mom, because who else could you really ask, on Christmas Eve day. Actually, my neighbors were also around and may be able to do it. So get creative with who you could ask. But, I just asked them to take my kids for a couple hours, and then my husband and I cooked a big meal, and we could enjoy that together, as opposed to it feeling super stressful to get dinner on the table. We kind of took our time and enjoyed cooking the way we used to in some ways. So that's the third thing, just adding in the priority of joy and pleasure where you can. And I recognize that everybody's circumstances are different, but looking for those opportunities, really looking for them. The fourth thing is about not having tunnel vision and staying aware of really what's going on in the world and how my life is just one small part in this big complex system. And that has been always helpful for me. I've shared about that on an earlier podcast. I believe I even shared that last year at the New Year's episode. There's just this piece of just sort of zooming out, imagining myself taking an out zoom lens perspective and looking at my life and being like, oh yeah, this is just one part of a million things happening every moment in the world. And sort of just not taking myself too seriously or taking any of it too seriously, letting myself be okay with the process of a messy human experience, right? And that my life is not as significant as sometimes I make it feel, or the pressure I put on myself. And the last one, which I talked about around Thanksgiving, I believe, is just gratitude. It sounds like the simplest thing. And sometimes in the personal development or self-help space, it can sound trite or even ridiculous. And I like to ground it back into pragmatic effectiveness, which is just that when I am feeling stressed out, if I can come back to honoring and acknowledging what is working in my life, it completely changes my focus and has me see more of my rose-colored glasses perspective, right? If I can really, really be present to little things that are just going well, or little pleasures or joys or luxuries that I have, like this morning, reading my book in bed in the morning. That to me always feels luxurious when I let myself read in bed in the morning, or a hot cup of tea, or when the sun breaks through the clouds and the sun comes out, or that my children are healthy, that my mom is happily remarried and doing well, that my brother's girls are healthy, my nieces, just anything that I can bring myself back to, cozy new socks and a furnace that works. Our furnace went out earlier this year, which I believe I shared on the show, and I was freezing, and I was like, right, of course, heat. So whatever it is to ground yourself back in a sense of gratitude is profoundly helpful in managing stress and in putting ourselves back in a space of joy and happiness, right? So it is now, at this time, it is the first day of 2019 when this show goes live. I cannot believe it's 2019. In the car ride up to the mountains last night, my kids were like, what if we said it was 2031? How old would we all be in 2031? And at first I was like, oh my gosh, 2031, that seems like so forever from now. We've got to be ancient by that point. And then I laughed. I'm like, gosh, that's only 12 years from now. Oh my gosh, I'll be 53. That's not even old. And we started doing the math of how old each of us would be. And my husband and I looked at each other in the front seat like, oh my gosh, don't you remember when it was turning into the year 2000 and it was Y2K fears, and just how time keeps passing, and the sun keeps rising and the sun keeps setting, and no matter what happens, the tides and all of the things keep happening. It is this natural opportunity to reflect, It's a natural opportunity to reflect and to consider what is going well and what you might like to shift or change in the new year ahead. And really, birthdays, full moons, whatever opportunities come your way that you remember to pause, I find that to be incredibly powerful. And so I just want to share about that today. So we just often don't take much time to pause, reflect, and take a real look at our lives and make choices with our eyes wide open. And it may be because we're too busy, or we're in a culture that, honors busyness as an ideal, and that we're caught up in just life's daily demands of, maybe it's managing work and your family and your children. And sometimes you're just living your life. You're just doing what needs to be done. And it's not that you're unhappy. It's just that we're not really taught that it's okay to take a moment to think about if we're really living the life we want to be living, or the way that we want to be living. It's just an interesting idea that we actually pause and consider, like, is this how I want it to be going? Some things are in my control, some things are not. What's going well? What isn't? What's in my control? What's not, right? Are we doing things that make us happy? Am I right now doing things that make me happy? Are you taking care of your body? Am I taking care of my body? I notice different aches and pains now in my 40s. Okay, what am I doing to really look at that? To really make sure I'm getting movement, so that I'm not just sitting there on the phone or on Zoom calls all day long, writing or coaching, right? Am I spending time with the people I love and enjoy? Are you really spending your time with people? When was the last time you called your dear old friend, or asked your friend to do something, or made a date with your partner, or called your grandfather? That's one for me that I need to always remember to do. My grandfather's 95 years old and I have to call him. I love to call him, but I can forget, right? Are you pursuing any of your dreams or desires? Like, no matter how small or big. I just bought myself a beautiful new journal because I love to handwrite in my journal. And I haven't done it as much since I wrote my book, and since I started podcasting and blogging. I haven't as much just busted out good old pen to paper to write a story, to create. I used to make up stories all the time when my son was a kid, littler, he's still a kid, in bed. I used to make these fantastical stories of the Crystalville Forest. Why didn't I write any of those down? What are those little and big things? I love to dance. I made sure I've gone to dance class twice in the last week or two, because it's something that I often put at the bottom of the list, right? But it's something brings me deep pleasure. So are you doing your best to find moments of joy? Are you doing your best to connect with people that matter to you? Are you doing your best to touch any parts of your life that are about creativity or self-expression? Are you leading in the way that you want to lead? At work, are you speaking up? Are you asking for opportunities? Are you contributing your ideas? Are you brainstorming solutions? Are you collaborating with your team? What does it look like for you right now in your life, day in, day out, in your behaviors and habits? And is it in alignment with how you'd like your life to be going? So we just get caught up in the doing, and that's okay. It's kind of how we're conditioned, that busyness, that routine, sometimes that struggle. Sometimes it's the things that seem necessary, but they're not. I know that about myself. I'm like, wait, is that really that important? So New Year's and, birthdays, like I said, solstice can be a perfect moment to sort of take inventory and to check in with yourself. And that's just what I want to invite you to do when you're listening to the show. I just gave you 5 ways that I manage stress and overwhelm during busier times of life, whether that's the holiday season or back to school season or end of quarterly review season, whatever season it is for you that stresses you out. The 5 things I just mentioned can really support you. And then I just want to talk a little bit about taking a pause to sort of take inventory of your life with the new year. And again, there's a million ways to do this. You can Google it, right? I don't really care which way you do it. If you want to write or vision board or sit with your family and dream up 10 things you want to do over the year or whatever, right? If there's core questions you want to ask yourself, it really doesn't matter. One thing that does matter is that if you're listening to this, we have some luxury of choice in our life. We have some accessibility to internet, to podcasts, to information, right? You may feel stuck or trapped in certain areas of your life, but the truth is you have some power to reflect and take different action. And I'm inviting you to do that. I invite all my clients, friends, family, everyone all the time to just consider that, yes, change can be hard. Transitions can be painful or uncomfortable. I have to remind myself that all the time when we're transitioning at the start of summer and then at the start of the school year with my kids, where I can feel the tension as everybody goes back to work and school, or as we all settle into a little bit more time together as a family. I can feel that when I've struggled with much harder things in my life, like the loss of my dad, and I could feel what that would be like at the holidays without him or my birthday without him. There's transitions and there's changes that are not always comfortable. And I'm a fundamental believer, and I've seen it in actuality. I just taught on this for a couple hours at a seminar recently around where can we find choice? Where can we find choice, right? So that's what I want you to think about. You can do this reflection of the new year however you want to, but I want to invite you to really look at your life and see where you have choice around the way you respond to things, around the way you spend your time, around the way you don't spend your time. I was listening to Oprah interview Michelle Obama, and I have Michelle Obama's book Becoming with me on this trip to the mountains, and that's my next thing I'll be reading. And I was listening to these two amazingly courageous, bright women that I respect a lot have a conversation. And Oprah asked Michelle Obama about optimism and if she, still feels optimistic in the United States right now, in the state of the world. Like, does she still feel optimistic? And I thought Michelle Obama's answer was interesting, which is that we have to feel optimistic. That is just the way we need to be in order to move forward effectively. That is the choice she constantly makes, consistently, is optimism. And I have been accused of being a diehard optimist while also being a realist. Like I said, you've been listening for a while, you know parts of my story. I do not have my head in the sand. I have survived cancer. I went through my parents getting divorced when I was a 13-year-old. I've been through the loss of my dad. I went through infertility to have both of my children. I've had people in my life I love dearly struggle with loss and illness. And, I'm not living like in la la land here. And I consistently choose optimism. I choose to believe that more people are good than evil. I choose to believe that something else is possible. I choose to keep trying to forgive myself, to keep learning more self-compassion, to keep trying to find compassion for those who see the world so vastly differently than I do, so that I can figure out how to support change. And I just keep looking for optimistic approaches to the messy experience of being human. And that's just my choice, right? And if that's not you, you get to be however you are, and you get to choose if that's working for you, right? You just get to choose that. Is that working for me? What would it look like to be just 1% more optimistic? What would it look like for me to look for 1% opportunity of more happiness in my day-to-day? There's a book I have not read, but my friend was just talking to me about it. It's by Dan Harris called 10% Happier. And I have listened to a podcast with him, and he has a meditation app that I have used some. And I just love the idea of 10% happier versus like, oh, let's just blow it out of the park and make everything amazing. If you've been struggling for a while, or you've been stuck in a rut, or you've gotten so accustomed to the status quo you can't even imagine another way, then what about 1% or 10%, right? Like 1% more opportunity for joy, 10% happier. What opportunities could you look for to choose something else? So just consider that as I walk you through what are some of the questions I ask myself in the new year. And again, I'm not attached to you doing it this way. I am a bit attached to you doing it somehow, to you carving out like an hour of your time to really reflect and consider, how's it going? And if you don't have an hour, give it 10 minutes in the car and quiet, right? Just quietly driving along. Like, how's it going? Am I doing my best to be happy? Am I doing my best to pursue things that matter to me? Am I doing my best to be of service, to be of contribution, to leave the world better? Am I doing my best at my marriage? Am I doing my best at work? Is this the right role for me? Is there some other way I can make a difference, right? So the number one thing is just to do something. Pause to create. Be intentional about what you'd love the next year to look like, what you'd like to make happen, what you'd like to prioritize. I personally think writing it down is best. I usually start with just writing down my own ideas in a journal. And then several weeks into the new year, I usually create a vision board with a girlfriend of mine who's just super artistic and creative. And because it's fun to spend time with her and drink tea, it's become a tradition of ours. And if that's not your jam, cool. And if you don't like to call it a vision board, I kind of think of it as just a collage, which always makes me feel like I can make pretty things by cutting things out and using marker and that I don't have to paint or have some deep latent talent in fine arts, but that I can still make something that inspires me and I enjoy doing. So I do that later. But initially, I just start with my ideas, like what went well? What do I want to be different? What are my goals? What are my desires? And then usually somewhere in the first month or two, I sit with my husband and talk about like, what do we want to do this year? We really love to go see a show at Red Rocks. Let's make sure that's on our list, right? Like, let's make sure we actually do that. We really love to go camping and we don't do that often. Okay, I've been dying to go back to Utah. Let's put it on the list. Let's figure out when we can do it. So do something, whether it's writing or drawing or, collaging or talking to your partner or girlfriend, do something. And writing it down, I do suggest adds a certain degree of ritual to it. And then another thing, the second piece is to make sure you're paying attention to the celebrations. And I already talked about that some, but really like pausing to reflect on all that you have accomplished. I sort of suck at this sometimes. I'm going to be honest. I've been thinking about if I wrote another book. And the other day I woke up early in the morning and the first thought that came to my head was, if I wrote another book, I might start with the lines, I'm exhausted by anxiety. I don't know what it will take for me to feel truly satisfied with myself and my work in the world. Maybe I'll never feel fully safe or at peace. I was like, wow, is that a dark start to a book? And then I was like, but maybe that's the naked truth that's sort of there to share, the story to tell. And I just am dancing in that space in terms of focusing on celebrations of like being real and really showing up for what is hard and honoring what you have accomplished. I had a good year in my business. This was my 4th year in business. And I was super naive when I started my own coaching practice and really didn't know what it would take. And maybe that's good because I don't know if I would have done it, right? I don't know if I would have left the security of my previous career, a really secure, career as a school counselor. And this year went really well. And I started branching out into new spaces and doing both one-on-one coaching and some consulting work inside of companies and organizations and looking at that as a path and how I can make an impact there and how that could be exciting and new and a beautiful use of my skills to really start speaking more publicly, which is something I love and I'm good at. And how can I really leverage my skills to make a greater impact? So I had a good year. I did new things. We took our kids to Europe for 6 weeks, which was a lifelong dream. Literally, I did an episode all about it and what we learned from that experience. And I often skip over my wins. I, like most of you, find it easier to focus on shortcomings and failures. What didn't happen, what I didn't get to, what didn't go as far as I'd hoped, what I haven't written, right? The download numbers I didn't get on the podcast versus the listeners that I did get. Thank you, all of you who are listening. Please share with your friends, right? Like I don't focus the spotlight of attention on what's going well as much as I think I should, as much as I know it's beneficial to do so. So number 2 is for you to focus on some of your celebrations. I start every coaching call with my clients with their wins. After I start with like a mindful moment. We always start with that. And then we move into wins because what I have found is incredibly bright, accomplished, successful, big-hearted women. That's who I work with, leaders in their fields. They do not take the time to notice what they are doing well, what has gone well. They immediately are focused on the next big thing to accomplish. And when we can train ourselves to really pay attention to what the wins, again, the amount of joy we can access and satisfaction. So I need to take my own coaching. So that's number 2 on this, is to focus on celebrations or wins. The third thing is to do some reflections and then letting go. Did I do what I had hoped to this year? Did I make the contribution that I had hoped to make? Are there places that I held back or fell short? And then let it go, right? So what did I do and what didn't I do? So you're just going to then release whatever, works for you to let go, what didn't happen. So you're not harping on it and giving yourself a hard time for all of the shortcomings. So number 2 was to focus on what has actually gone well, what you can be proud of, what you did do that you would wanted to do, what you feel were successes or victories, right? And then the third piece is, okay, let me look at this objectively. And where were there places that I didn't get to it or that I got scared and held myself back? Okay, can I compassionately let that go and consider if I want to pursue that again in 2019 or not, right? And the last thing, and those of you who know me, who have worked with me, who have seen me speak, who have been listening to this show, I have said for long time that it's more likely to get done if it's fun. So life in general is just better if you can find fun, if you can be playful. And it's not like I just skip around my life and I'm always like on cloud nine. I had a rough morning this morning actually, where I was not my best self with my family, but I can usually bring it back to fun. I can usually bring humor and playfulness into my life so that I can have pleasure and joy and laughter. So when you're doing this, I like to think of the big themes and then list out a few things that I could do that would help me fulfill those big themes. But let it be playful. Let there be space for creativity. Let there be space for magic, for openings, for things you might not be able to predict could occur. It doesn't have to be tight and hard and fast rules or numbers of accomplishment for 2019 or pounds lost or days worked out or, these things, these numbers we put on ourselves. If that lights you up, cool, go for it. Truly, if that's what gets you excited. But whatever gets you excited, if it's the collaging, let it be fun. If it's the dreaming, let it be fun. I really feel like it shouldn't be drudgery. It should be this beautiful opportunity for pausing, reflecting, and creating what's next. Pausing, reflecting, and creating what's next. So with that, my loves, I wish you the best of New Year's, full of intentionality and gratitude and new possibilities. I don't know what's coming next for me either. I'm not sure what's fully going to be held. I'm not sure what I'm going to write down on my list or what I'm going to cut out of the magazines and make. I don't know what season 3 of the show will look like. I don't know how long the show will go on. I don't know how long this creative project will unfold. I'm not sure. I don't know exactly what kind of work I'll be doing or with exactly whom I'll be doing it. But I do know that I'm in a space of creativity, collaboration, excitement, possibility, exploration, and pursuing of my passions to help people connect more deeply with every conversation and have that have a ripple effect of profound impact through leadership in how we show up in the world with more love, more compassion, more hope, and joy. So with that, Happy New Year, and I'll see you next time. Thank you so much for listening to Naked Conversations. Yay! It really means the world to me every time you show up. And if you want to know more about how to work with me personally and my coaching, you can check that out over at sagebhubs.com. You can also get some great free resources over there about how to make powerful requests and many blog posts full of resources for living a naked life, as well as grab a copy of my book, Naked Communication: Courageously Create the Relationships You Really Want. Thanks again. See you next time.